Elliot, so I think we both found that quarter four has been really sort of interesting so far, and I thought it would be helpful to have a little roundup and update as to what we're seeing. So, on the employer side of things, what kind of trends have you been seeing recently?
You're right. It's definitely been an interesting quarter for sure. Lots going on. I think four key things really. First, so the International Sustainability Standards Board, they've published a new set of standards, and this is kind of set to be implemented by more than 100,000 different firms, across the world. So it's quite interesting, and I think not how that will impact finance. I think they will start to be looking for candidates that do have knowledge of those standards and are able to kind of, account for sustainability within the various businesses and advise upon, new ways to kind of improve within that area. Secondly, there's obviously the unfortunate, wars going on in Ukraine and between Israel and Hamas, and that's having quite significant commodity price, impacts. And I think that is kind of a concern for employers that are impacted, by those things, the price of oil, price of gas, etc. And as a result, there's now, an even increased demand for, strong accountants and advisors who can kind of help navigate and kind of forecast, how this can impact those businesses and how they can kind of deal with that sort of headwind, really. And third, as we all know, interest rates have gone up. And as a result, kind of debt financing within the sort of private equity world is becoming more of a challenge. And, as a result, there's kind of been, a decrease in the number of, $1 billion plus buyouts as a result of this. And there's now more of a focus on the kind of smaller businesses and how we can have, how private equity can enable them to grow. So I think, what is of value here is kind of candidates having knowledge of kind of creative finance methods, that aren't necessarily relied on debt. So yeah, so the final kind of trend that I've seen, with employers is kind of more around skills first. So I know obviously experience and longevity is important. However, employers are placing more value, on candidates having the necessary skills to do the job, even if they don't necessarily have the longevity. Now, yes, of course, it's good to see, 5, 10, 15 years experience, but if they don't necessarily have the skills needed, then, that is becoming less valuable. It's really quite an interesting shift, I think. But what are your thoughts, Bev, on the kind of candidate side? Have you seen anything interesting or stand out over the last, quarter?
Well, I think the high cost of living is continuing, interest rates, inflation. Candidates are still looking for job security, stable companies. They want to be somewhere where they can stay for a long time. Candidates also want flexibility. So hybrid working is still an ongoing theme. There are certainly companies, as I think we mentioned earlier in the year, who are wanting candidates to go back into the office more days. But unfortunately, in some cases, that can have an impact on the talent that a company can secure, only because, some candidates are still saying, no, it's a deal breaker for me to work full time in the office. We've also got Generation Z entering the market. They're going to make up over 25% of the workforce, according to the World Economic Forum. And for those candidates, it's companies that are making a positive impact on the world, all the sustainable sort of companies. Those companies are really, really sought after by that generation who find it really important to work for a company that's going to do some good. So just coming back to the employer side of things, what do you think they can do at the moment in order to stay competitive in this market?
I think your point around Gen Z is particularly kind of apt here. It's really important to look at what they want from a role in both the kind of short and long term, and really show these people how what they do as a business is particularly good for the environment or kind of maybe aligns to their goals. And particularly on the finance side, at the junior level where, you might be processing invoices, AP, AR, you might not necessarily see the bigger impact that you're having within the business. So I think it's really important for employers to highlight this during that kind of initial interview process so people are aware, okay, this is the impact I'm having and I can see that, the good that I'm doing here. Secondly, as you said, cost of living and the kind of impacts of that, that is having an impact on the job market for sure, and maybe deterring some candidates from moving to a new employer. So I think discussing, company stability and security at interviews is only going to, put employers in sort of good stead with candidates, and providing that assurance is really going to help people when they're looking for a kind of a longer term role, if they know they are joining a company that is stable and, can provide them with that, kind of opportunity really. And finally, good talent is hard to find. When you find an exceptional candidate, move quick. Make sure your hiring process is efficient, is thought out from the start. You kind of have set kind of schedules. We're going to do round one interviews, week one, round two interviews, week three, week four, whatever works. Just make sure that that is mapped out properly, and always aim to give, good solid feedback to candidates promptly, really. What about yourself with candidates? How can they remain competitive to employers in this current job market?
Well, computer software skills, spreadsheeting skills, they are of paramount importance. So I think, whether it's a financial reporting role or an analytical type of role, having intermediate to advanced Excel is going to be a really sought after skill by employers. And I also think that candidates should research AI tools and perhaps cloud accounting software, just because things are moving more towards those areas. And I think that employers will definitely appreciate a candidate's knowledge and research. It's been very interesting, and thank you for giving your insights. And we will definitely update again next quarter.
You're welcome. Really good to talk, and speak soon.